turn your head around, here's Marie Vega.
Hello and welcome to the show. Tonight we have a psychic healer. His name is Dean Kraft. Dean is not only a spiritually oriented healer, but a scientifically oriented healer, validating his claims. I want you to meet him now. Hi, Dean.
How you doing?
How you doing?
Nice to be here.
Dean, this is something unusual. Most of the spiritual healers, they're all called spiritual healers because there's some sort of mysticism to how the healing is done. I think you have a different opinion about that?
Actually, I think what healing is sort of loving. And in my own work since 1972, I try to, how can you say, be a channel, or you can call it a pipe, a lead pipe, an empty lead pipe, where I try to have myself open spiritually, mentally, and physically, and just let love come through me and act as a catalyst or stimulant for somebody's own healing system to get them started again. And it's basically usually with people who have exhausted medical science, and many people are recommended by their medical doctor. Mm-hmm. And I don't put on an Indian headdress and have maracas or beads, and I don't have, you know, hold up a big cross and have a big black robe, and I don't do any rituals. It's just, I call it the standard laying on of hands.
Actually, you know, I have your book. You've written a book which explains, and I like to show it up to everybody right now, because it's a portrait of a psychic healer, and it explains how you got into this, what happened to you, when you started, what age it was, and so forth. Briefly, I'd like you to bring everybody up to that, but I really wanted to concentrate on what you've learned and what you've done through this period. I know the first issue was we don't want to go into it because it's a long story about the door locks and all of that, but you were quite young, weren't you? I
was 22 at the time. I'm 36 now.
Still
and
young.
actually, I feel like I've been doing this my whole life, even though it's been, it's like 14, going on 15 years.
Yeah.
And I had this experience with some friends in a car with these door locks, and we were somehow getting some type of communication from them, and through this communication it said that I would have a healing ability.
Yeah.
And at first, of course, I thought that one of my friends in the car were playing a joke. Maybe he had a little transmitter, and he'd make these door locks go up and down, and I figured, so we checked everybody out, and sometimes we just shut the car off, turn the engines off. And I remember one time, me and my boss, his name used to be Buddy Geyer, and we used to have this music store on 48th Street and 7th Avenue in Manhattan. And one night we just locked up the store, and a friend of mine named Sam Sunshine, who worked a few blocks away, real name, he met us, and we all got in this car, and all of a sudden these door locks go up and down real crazy. So I thought, well, maybe it's short in the car. Logical explanation. I was never really into, I never did any reading on parapsychology or the occult, or and so my logical mind said it must be a short, and Buddy said it must be a short, Sam said it must be a short. So we pulled the car over the side, we shut the engine, and we said, you know, if there's a spirit in the car, give us 5 clicks, and the things went up and down 5 times, you know. We still thought that maybe there was trickery involved. But after, I can say, after a few weeks of really testing it out and looking in the car for shorts, we found out that it wasn't.
Real.
Yeah, it was something real that was going on. I was able to, at a point, to click my hands, and the door clicks used to go up and down. So maybe subconsciously on some level I could have been affecting it, but so many things happened where I didn't feel I was concentrating my energy on those door locks.
What do you think it was? I mean, this kind of energy that you have, I don't want to go into a long thing here, but most psychics, they believe they can do this, they have this feeling and everything. You were reluctant about it. You weren't looking for it.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't looking
why
for
would it come to you, and how does it work if you don't want it?
I mean, to this day, I feel that I was walking down the street, and all of a sudden, you know, I feel my power is from, God, or from a higher source, the higher source that created us in this earth. And I figured, well, maybe when he threw that bolt down, it deflected off a building and hit me by mistake, you know?
Huh?
Yeah, I feel I'm the most unlikely candidate, you know? I do. I've grown to, I've accepted it. I've accepted what's happened to me. But, you know, there was definitely a number of years where there was a deep reluctance on my part to, you know, really understand and accept what was going on. But
see, most of the psychics that I've interviewed, or all the laying on of hands, you got to help, you know, you got to believe I'm curing you, you got to believe this, and you put your head into it. So
I never had that, because I used to work, I did certain experiments, for instance, where I worked on a flask of cancer cells, and the cells were called HeLa cells, and it was a derivative of a woman by the name of Henrietta Lacks, who some 35 years ago died of cervical cancer. And what they did is they were able to save her cell. It was so virulent, and now every government in the world uses this cell for cancer research. And I did a couple experiments. I did it first at the Livermore Laboratories in California, and then I replicated it a few years later at the Science Unlimited Research Foundation. And what they would do is they would put the cancer cells in the flask, and I'd hold it in my hand, and then you'd have a scientist next to me holding the same type flask, same type cell, and mimicking my emotions. And then you'd have a control flask that nobody would touch. And then after, let's say, 10 minutes or so, they would check my flask out and find out that a lot of the cells were dead. And they'd check out the gentleman who was doing the same thing I was doing and mimicking my emotions, and his flask there were no dead cells in his flask. And which showed an effect.
What are you going for, Dean? I mean, what your feelings were, was it to kill the cell?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so you did that with, how did you kill the cells, with love?
No, actually, I'll tell you, what it was is that the cell itself, it depends on what action you're trying to create. You know, you create with action. Okay. My action was to try to reverse the polarity around the cell, by the negative and positive. And by doing that, the cell it just blows. Disintegrates on its own. And this is sort of a theory that I'm doing research with now in regards to cancer research. I've written certain designs and been doing research over the years to try to quantify exactly what I'm doing around these cancer cells to create that effect, so that a foundation that I have can do the research to see if we can, through technology, recreate that same effect. And maybe one day have a machine of some sort, anti-tumor machine or some machine that could do to the cells what I do to them. But when it has to do with a human being and I touch them, it's like I'm loving them.
How does that react with them? With, like, for instance, are you trying to get into the mind of the person and get them to work with it, or is it the mind of the disease? I want to know. Does the disease have a mind?
It's three levels. We're dealing with three levels. We're dealing with I call it the spiritual level. Now that is spiritual, meaning peace within oneself.
Yeah.
Then the mental, emotional level, and then the physical. And they're all connected. They're all linked together. Mm-hmm. And I believe when I'm working with someone, I'm working on all three. I believe that disease comes from stress, and I believe stress comes from a negative thought. So what I try to always tell people is that when they get a negative thought in their mind, or any thought, what they should really do is like sort of put a gate over their conscious mind like this. And as the thoughts come in, they just don't let every thought just come in and hit your conscious mind and swim around and create the anxiety, the stress, and then disease. What you do is you put a barrier up, and as the thought comes in, you quantify it. You say, well, is this thought negative or positive? If the thought is negative, then I leave those gates down and I say the word deflect, and I sort of bounce that negative thought out of my head before it makes an imprint in my conscious mind. And as I do that, if the thought is very emotionally charged, then I substitute another, another nice thought to take its place. And so what it is you sort of get into doing this like almost every minute, every second of the day, but it becomes natural after a while. And this way, you're just letting in the positive thoughts.
But you don't really believe it at first, do you, Dean? I mean, if there's somebody that's here that you don't like and you have a negative thought about that person, it's hard to switch.
I would say deflect.
Deflect.
Yeah, now I'm still on the path myself, so nobody has it perfect.
Yes.
But what it means is, for myself, I've been practicing this now for 7 years. I might get a negative thought where before I would sit in there for 2 or 3 years. Now it goes in, I might get it out in 2 or 3 hours, or maybe 1 hour, maybe 10 minutes.
Are you telling me that some things work sort of automatically, that if we can say it, we condition it, it's a computer?
We have control over our minds.
And our thoughts.
We create our thoughts.
Right.
If there's something negative in there, since a negative thought can create stress, then let's do away with as many negative thoughts, especially the negative thoughts of the future, like the what-ifs. What if this should happen? What if that should happen? So as soon as you get those what-ifs in there, you got to deflect them. And just choose a positive thought to take its place. But you just find yourself a little lighter. You find yourself not bogged down. You find yourself not getting into any depression. And you find yourself in control of what you're thinking.
There's a confliction there. There's a confliction between the intellectual thought and the emotional situation, too. Especially, you know, if you're Jewish or Italian and you got all these emotions going, it's hard to deflect those thoughts and to change them around.
Well, no. Yes, it's hard in the beginning, but as you get more and more to the system and you become more and more conscious of using the word deflect when you have a negative thought, then you do gravitate less negative thoughts to you. Therefore, you gravitate less stress and you gravitate less disease. Yeah. It's just a preventative system that I've been doing and been sharing with people for years. And it's something so simple. Sometimes the simple things in life work. Nothing always ever has to be always complicated.
So now when you treat somebody or somebody comes to you, how do you facilitate it keep on being treated? I mean, the negative thought, if they haven't gotten to that point of enlightenment...
Well, they're coming to me to get to that point of enlightenment. Where they're coming to me not just to be touched, but they're coming to me to show them other ways how they can prevent stress, because it's not just me as a healer. I would like it to be one day where healing is extinct, where people are, through self-healing, are helping themselves. And I believe the first start of self-healing is a deflection of negative thoughts. You know, I'm not saying to, you know, hide away from the thought, deal with the thought, and then let it go. Don't let it sit and swim into the emotional system,
Let
and
it
then
get
it's creating stress and then creating disease. So therefore, you're trying to, you know, a person can get maybe 150 negative thoughts a day in their mind. Now, if you can deflect 85 of them, you're doing real good.
Okay, one other thing I want to ask you is what happens when you're like in an atmosphere, an environment with thoughts? Okay, you're not putting them out, but somebody else is
Put
putting
a
them out.
shield around yourself.
How do you know?
You just first of all,
put
you
it
don't
up
know.
there?
You just put a shield around yourself. In other words, what you don't want to do is you don't want to give your power away, okay?
Oh,
That has to do with other people. In other words, once your feelings get hurt by somebody, then all of a sudden you've given your power away to this person. You've just let it go. You can't and you shouldn't be affected by what people say to you.
Whether you give offense or take offense, it's just as bad, then.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. In other words, you want to, how can I say, you want to just not get affected by it, because you being affected by it's creating that further in the negativity.
Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of like when you're out in the environment, then an analogy, you know, the car smoke, this and that. A lot of things come into you that you're not even aware of. So when you're in a whole atmosphere, there's a lot of things that come in that you're not aware. So we're subjected to all of that.
Right, but we can,
So,
I believe we can shield ourselves from
ahead
it
of
on
time.
some level. Yes, ahead of time.
Get
Just like
ready.
before you get into like you say, with smoke, before you get into a room where there's going to be a lot of smoke, say, okay, I'm going to put a shield around myself. I'm not going to let this start to disturb me and throw me off balance, and you just deal with it. You just psych yourself up for it.
You're the first one, though, that's ever been in a bona fide hospital and helped patients, too, along with doctors. Aren't you,
What's
basically?
interesting, it must have been, let's say, maybe 10 years ago, I taught a group of doctors that was on the staff at Lincoln Hospital in New York.
Blue light or something you read?
Yeah, well, I was teaching the doctors how to sort of channel certain like light forms around the body and how to lay on the hands. And it was the drug detoxification unit there. And we just got a call from the doctor, Dr. Michael Smith there, the medical doctor in charge, saying that for the past 10 years, they've been practicing my technique, and they've been more successful than any other drug detox unit in the country, which is very good feedback to get.
So was it just through the lights or with the positive thinking and all
Well,
that?
it had to do with the positive thinking. It had to do with teaching them certainly on the hand techniques, and then teaching them basically how to sort of flow a light around the body and how to use this light and how to get their own energy system started.
Well, I want to hold our thoughts and go back, when we come back from the break, talk about the light that we put into the medical profession and how that's coming together and what you validated. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.